As we get into episode 29 of Ascendance of Bookworm, I'm throwing a lot of suspicion on the High Priest. Now, granted, High Priest has never been a good guy in this show. I mean, the story has always painted the High Priest as being this evil guy that is willing to kill Mine's parents. I mean, I'm not saying anything shocking here, but I just feel like there's something in works that's not really necessarily him trying to one-up Mine, but rather him trying to get rid of her. I think there is something to be said that despite the fact that even with Ferdinand, he believes that Mine is special and that she is something that can benefit their domain, I really do feel like the High Priest could have other desires. Like either he would want to get rid of Mine because she's too powerful. Obviously, she's taken him down once before, so she's a threat to him physically. But there might be also a thing where maybe he might be selling off to somebody else. I mean, the whole aspect of him bringing in the extra cups really makes me wonder. Now, I don't know enough about the ceremony to really understand what the significance would be to extra cups. It is a thing where they have a set amount of cups that they would be needed for the ceremony. Obviously, there's a set amount of people that these cups would be for, but who would get those extra cups? Would he take all the extra cups? Is it for somebody else, another domain? It's starting to put a lot of questions in my head about what could be the High Priest's end game. Like, is he really sold on this particular cathedral and this domain? Does he have outside desires outside of this domain? How could he, what could he use this for? I guess the big question mark. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, which brings a big, huge question as to what's going to happen around the corner. Like, I'm really stuck on those extra cups. And I'm assuming that that's going to be something big later on. I mean, obviously, Ferdinand claimed that he was going to go talk to the Lord about the extra cups, if that was really the Lord's request, but unfortunately we haven't heard the results of that conversation. So I'm assuming that this new guy, this new blue rub that showed up, and the appearance of Karst is probably a part of that whole thing. Obviously, if Ferdinand went to the Lord and the Lord said, no, I didn't tell him to do that, that's going to bring up a lot of threat within the cathedral itself. Obviously, the cathedral's always been this safe haven for Mine, and now with the High Priest himself making these orders, that's a big threat. That's a big threat within the same location. That it then for him, for Ferdinand's perspective, obviously proves to him that even here she's not safe. That there's people within the cathedral that she needs to be afraid of now. And the only person I can think of right now within the cathedral that has any sort of power and animosity towards Mine is the High Priest. So I'm assuming right around the corner, we're going to have the High Priest going bye-bye. Now, there was a small side of me that this entire time, through this entire cathedral arc of Ascendance of Bookworm, where I was hoping that Mine would soften the heart of the High Priest, and the High Priest would correct his ways. But I don't know, at this point, I think I don't have any hope for him. But I am getting way ahead of myself. That's pretty much a big part of this episode and what I kind of gravitated to. There's a couple of really other good points in this episode, obviously. The episode opened up with Damiel basically meeting everybody, and so they go around. She's got a new bodyguard. Everybody gets to meet him. It does hint a little bit that Damiel has habits because he's always been a low status noble, so he's always used to other nobles looking down upon him. So I didn't really get that whole comment, but I'm assuming it's that aspect of it's now kind of the sides are switched. He's so used to always having people look down at him, but he's not really responding properly around really a lot of commoners. What was interesting that throughout this entire episode, he's watching Mine, and he's realizing that Mine is very special. He's realizing why everybody looks at Mine as an asset, and that is because she's very unique, and she's obviously creating this whole printing press and everything, and he's realizing there's something special about her, and to the point where he has a conversation with Ferdinand and tells him, yeah, look, I'm starting to realize why she's kind of special. And it was very interesting. There's a very interesting conversation because I really like that it, on one hand, shows how smart Ferdinand is. He's not just a cloth guy. He's not just walking around barking orders. This is a guy that's very knowledgeable about not only the faith that he's within, but also combat itself and strategy. I mean, we've gotten to this quite a bit with Ferdinand, but here again, he's telling Damiel, as Damiel's once again saying, I still kind of hate the fact that this Shisho guy was assigned to her, and he still regrets the fact that he's being punished. And then Ferdinand stops him like, no, look, you gotta correct this. Let's set this straight. You're not being punished because of him. You're being punished because of your own crimes. And he points it out, you could have asked for help. Yes, this guy looked down upon you as a medium class. Like he goes out of his way to say that medium class noble was obviously ordering you, but you could have casted rot. and it could have signaled everybody else, somebody of higher power, to come over there and fix the situation. Yes, you couldn't have stopped him because you felt like he was a higher noble than you, but you could have got somebody that could have. It's kind of like the idea that if you see somebody that's higher than you that's doing something wrong, you go to somebody that's higher than them to tell them, I mean, he's my officer or whatever, but he's obviously doing something he's not supposed to be doing. You can't reprimand him, but somebody else can. I do like the fact that kind of sets that whole situation straight. And I kind of like that for myself as well, because I always felt bad for Damiel. And I kind of got Ferdinand's perspective prior to this, that he could have done something. He did stand by, and that was the whole point they were making when they were there. He just stood by, but he was a part of it. He didn't do anything to stop it. But this was given a clearer picture that he could have. He did have an out, and Ferdinand's pointing it out to him. But the good thing about this whole conversation is it really establishes that Damiel is looking after Mine. Now, I hate this because this makes this makes me feel like Damiel's being flagged right now, so I hope that's not a bad sign, but we'll see. During this episode, we did get the dedication ceremony. I believe it was the dedication ceremony. They didn't say, like, we are now doing the dedication ceremony. It's where they go into this room and they start pouring out their mana into these goblets. And then that was the point in which the high priest came in and said, oh, hey, the Lord said to fill these two, which is very odd. But again, Ferdinand's thankfully not an idiot, so he's obviously going to see that and go, yeah, just follow his rules, but I'll look into this. Don't worry about it. And I kind of wish that we got the answer to that, but again, that's got to be something they'll reveal later. I'm assuming, hopefully, with the beginning of the next episode, because like I said, I think it's going to be why this new blue robe is there and why Karstedt's there, is because I believe Ferdinand now knows that the high priest is doing something. Later on, we had Mine getting her typesets, the little things that she had Johann create, and this is where she gets super excited and starts talking about how she's assigning him the title of Gutenberg, and they're like, what's a Guten, what's that called? And she started talking about how he revolutionized printing and everything like that, and like, why are you saying that? You're just going to create this thought process of like, well, so there's somebody else that created this thing, so it wasn't you, it wasn't Johann, but that's fine. They just had her basically get super excited to the point that she just literally passes out or faints. It was absolutely goofy. I like how Damiel's like, oh crap, I'm totally getting executed this time. And this is where we get into the heartbreaking moment of this episode, the hard part to watch. I kind of started breaking at the end of this segment, but yes, this is when Mine's like, hey, the snow's melting. That means I can go home, right? And he's like, nope, ain't gonna happen. Wolf's dead. So this brings up this whole conversation where, yeah, she's going to have to stay at the cathedral. We are now getting further in the threat that Mine is facing, that we do now have kind of, they're assuming it's almost like there's a confirmation here that there's probably nobles involved, that nobles themselves possibly killed Wolf. And if nobles are involved, then she's in extreme danger. And so they want her to remain at this cathedral. And this is the point in which he gives to Mine a request or an invitation to her parents. Her parents now have to come to the cathedral, where he divulges everything to them, that when she turns 10 years old, I'm going to adopt Mine out to a noble. And he's like, yeah, this is somebody that I know is somebody that will take care of her. And this is like one of those really struggling points, because obviously from the perspective of her parents, this is not something they want. Their child is going to be taken away from them. But it was nice that the mother, at least, was the one that steps forward and say, look, Tuli has been telling me everything. I know that you're going to take care of her. You have been taking care of her. Basically, I'm giving her up to you. Please keep her safe. And like I said, that was really, really hard to watch, because I mean, it's literally two parents giving up their child, and she's young. Like, she's not even 10 years old yet. And yeah, granted, she's, the mother's trying to at least soften the blow to the father that, look, a lot of children will head off when they reach 10. I mean, this is nothing new, but it's still something that's difficult, and especially when you're talking about a child that's not even 10 years old yet. But the other interesting things that come from this conversation is that he's specifically pointing out, I guess, the overall story of it. Yeah, obviously we know that the Wolf was after Mine. They couldn't find him. Wolf ends up dead. Yes, they're assuming that nobles are after Mine now, but looking at a broader picture of it, yes, we've seen them talk about the fact that, she does have mana that can be used for bad, but it's just idea that they believe, because of her power being so great and higher than anticipated, she is crucial for the city, that this city lacks mana. Yeah, and again, that was something that they got into, I think, the first moment that she came to the cathedral. This mentioned this idea that they do kind of lack a mana. And with all these domains, and we haven't really gotten too much perspective of outside of this particular city, but the assumption is that the amount of mana that this particular city has is really low. That kind of indicates that other regions are doing well as compared, and that's obviously a threat. So she's a great asset. Like, she is this rare commodity that they desperately need. And they does kind of want to keep it for the benefit of this country. But at the same time, if she ever is out of control, and he's very clear about this, if she's ever out of control, if she will not do what I'm requesting, which will put her into safety and into my control, she will be executed. Whether she's out of control or somebody else gets a hold of her, she will be executed. She will be a threat to the well-being of this country. I do think this conversation as well does indicate that he has spoken to their lord. That, again, with the whole question mark of the high priest, what he was doing with his goblets, he's obviously spoken to him, because right here he indicates that he had the lord and the knights limit the movement of the nobles, which again I think is an after effect of the conversation about the high priest. They probably talked about Wolf being assassinated. They probably talked about what the high priest was doing, and this is that point where they're really trying to lock things down for the future. Now, I think at this point, I really do want a more broader sense of what's going on behind the scenes, because I feel like there's a little bit too much vagueness as to what is around the corner. And I'm assuming that's because this is all kind of building up to a really big point, a really big pinnacle point, turning point of the story. I kind of wondering if it'll probably be around the ceremony that we'll see like something really big happen. But it does feel like right now, based on my speculations that I'm building right now with the high priest, the lords and nobles, everybody after mine, the significance of mine, keeping mine under control, the lord now being involved with it, something big's going to happen. And I am hoping it will be really well executed, because I feel like it's building up to something. And yes, finally, the last thing we have is the morning of the spring ceremony, spring prayer, where Ferdinand's like very, very upset about this. So we're kind of getting a sign about his feelings of this blue cloth this blue robe that we just been introduced to. Very reluctantly has to say that you do have more people that are going to be accompanying to the ceremony. And that, yes, of course, is Cardus and the blue robed guy, which again, we've seen him briefly at this conversation with Wolf. And I feel like he's been working behind the scenes. I want to say that he's possibly who killed Wolf, or at least he may have ratted out what Wolf was doing and it got him killed. But I do believe that this blue robe was involved with the death of Wolf. Well, I think the thing that I'm most curious about is who this blue robe's going to be in regards to power. I haven't really looked too much. I haven't really paid attention too much to clothing, but obviously there's a lot of indication as to rank based on clothing. And I almost feel like the blue robes is almost like a uniform. So you have, with Ferdinand, he's got like a blue collar, whereas this guy has a white collar. He does have like a golden sash, which could mean something. Mine specifically has like a gold trim, whereas everybody else has like a blue trim or like a light blue trim. So I'm assuming there's something regarding that. One of these days we'll probably look into if there's some significance to that, but we'll probably find out what kind of position this blue robe has. But obviously, like I said, I think Ferdinand's not happy about him being there, so obviously they have a thing. He's already pretty much asked mine to squeak, which we already seen in the PV, obviously, but I kind of hoped that the inclusion of this character will be somebody that will really push buttons on mine, somebody that can really tease her, which I think is going to be really fantastic mix of chemistry for the series. But yeah, that's my thoughts on episode 29 of Ascendance of Bookworm. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below, comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Subscribe if you have not already. I do coverage of this show on a weekly basis. Definitely stick around so you can hear my coverage on that. As always, I definitely appreciate anybody that supports us through Patreon or tips link in the description below. And y'all take care.